Alright, guys, so Birdman, I don't think a lot of you will know who Birdman is, but yeah, I mean, some people will, some people won't. I'll just explain who Birdman is. Birdman made a video. I'll see if I can find it for you guys. Yeah, right here. So, exposing the grift, debunking Asmongold on IQ in less than 10 minutes, and then exposing the grift, debunking Asmongold again. So, this guy made 2 videos. I never reacted to these videos just because this one's a very long watch. This one wasn't. I think I had other Asmongold content I was reacting to, but this guy, like, has made some incredibly good videos on explaining why Asmongold is honestly not particularly smart when it comes to his takes, and unfortunately his audience are just like willing to blindly believe anything that he says because they think he's based. I mean, the problem with Asmongold is that he fulfills a lot of people's victim complex, where Asmongold says things like Somalian people are inherently lower IQ, which is just an inherently racist thing to say, and there's just no excusing that. It is actually just like, if you think Somalian people have an inherently lower IQ, first of all, that's not true, like, at all. Nothing suggests that Somalian people have an inherently lower IQ. Secondly, you're a racist person. The only time Asmongold has a problem with any sort of fraud going on is when it's a black person doing it. The only black person that he seemed to not have an issue with was Lakari, and he was exposed for having CSAM links in a notepad file. So, yeah, that's terrific. But yeah, this guy has made some pretty good content on Asmongold overall. I never reacted to it, but if you guys want to react to his videos to get caught up on it, yeah, just go check it out. It's on his channel. Figured, though, that we would react to this video because there's been some new developments on Asmongold's hilariously stupid takes, where now Asmongold is tweeting out, I saw Asmongold tweet this out. I was debating whether I do, like, short form content on it, where he says that black people benefit from systematic racism. Apparently there is a difference between systemic and systematic racism. Yeah, we're gonna, like, watch all about it in this Birdman video. Let's go.
Lord of the Fleas has blessed us with yet another shit take on Twitter, this time alleging that black people benefit from systematic racism. We're going to debunk this nonsensical claim. And this time, I'll try to be as brief as I can for old double-digit IQ here.
That's a reference to the fact that Asmongold thinks that Somalian people are inherently lower IQ, when in reality, I feel like the only person that's actually low IQ is Asmongold, to be honest. Like, he's just brainlessly pro-Trump on, like, everything.
Because
he also refuses to denounce Trump for being on the Epstein files. He makes excuses for Trump being on the Epstein list, saying, oh, just because he's on the list doesn't mean he did anything. Oh, you know, there's still time to release the files, you know, all that stuff. It's just, like, insane levels of cope to be like, brother, I love President Trump.
Last video was too long for him, so I'll have to re-explain the start-stop buttons for you, Zach, because you were too pussy to respond to my previous video, where I cooked your monkey ass for over an hour.
Damn. That's racist, Birdman. I don't know about that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm pretty sure Birdman himself is a black person, so he's like, it's fine.
No.
If anybody can say it, it's him.
One where your excuse for ducking me was, an hour is too long for me to grift. That's like 12 large Dr. Peppers.
Well, you also have to remember that, like, Asmongold, like, the way Asmongold operates with his reaction content is he pre-watches everything. Like, that's how he does it. Like, Asmongold is terminally online. He never leaves his house. So, let me explain how he does his content. He scrolls through Twitter when he wakes up. He starts the go live button, whether it's on Twitch or Kick. He multi-streams on both. Scrolls through Twitter for his entire content. Gets offline and then scrolls through Twitter. Like, his entire life is just having his brain hooked up to, like, a MAGA machine, basically, like a disinformation machine. And Asmongold is constantly being fed shit in his Twitter feed of, like, black people doing horrible things, because the way Twitter's algorithm works is it will feed you stuff that you want to see. And because Asmongold, like, is constantly seeing black people do bad shit, he is psyoping himself into thinking that black people are, like, awful people, basically.
Even I can't rot my teeth out with that much. Isn't it strange how you respond to the video where I barely talk about you at all, where you lied and claimed I called you racist the whole video?
Well, I mean, even if you did call him racist, it wouldn't mean that it's not true, because Asmongold is a racist person. Like, we have to just understand that he has made it pretty clear he's not a fan of black people, unless they have CSAM on their computer, of course. By the way, can I just bring that up? Isn't it interesting how Asmongold has a huge pattern of behavior of surrounding himself with predatory people? Like, I don't know. Just think, let's list them off the top of our head, right? We had Lakari, as we mentioned earlier, had CSAM on his computer. Tectone, he's still friends with Tectone, who's a rapist. He was convicted of it in a civil court. You have Nuxtaku, who got exposed for being a threat to children in his Patreon Discord server. He made an NSFW channel for a 14-year-old. He was exposed to tons of gore content, lolicon content, other NSFW content, was groomed into self-harming and dropping out of school. Like, Nuxtaku is pretty egregious with his, like, dangers to children. He also, in his videos, had, like, links to lolly websites, and a lot of his audience was children, so they were constantly... They had ways of accessing lolly content, even through his, like, regular content. Rev Says Desu is an orbiter of him. Rev Says Desu likes lolly. Chibi Reviews, orbiter of Asmongold, likes lolicon. Kirsch, orbiter of Asmongold, she also defended lolly. I mean, I don't know. I could go on, but it seems like Asmongold does have a pattern of behavior of just allowing weird predatory fucks in his orbit.
Sad. Wow, mic drops, I know. So basically, this guy spent his entire video calling me racist.
You sure about that? You sure about that? You sure about that?
I mean, listen, even if Birdman called Asmongold racist, who gives a shit? Like, you are racist. You think that Somalian people have an inherently lower IQ? That is a racist thing to say. I'm sorry. Like, you're saying that just because somebody is a different race, that their IQ is just inherently lower. That's stupid. That in itself is a low IQ take. And it's very uneducated. Also, racism in general is just low IQ. Like, any person that actually is, like, racist is just, like, automatically kind of stupid to me. I don't know, Birdman. I kind of, weirdly, I don't know if I would have spent too much time making this point, Birdman, because ultimately this kind of just comes down to you playing semantics over him saying what he said was racist, but calling him a racist. Ultimately, it really doesn't fucking matter. Either way, what he said is bad, so I don't really think it was worth playing semantics over this. If I were you, I probably wouldn't have included this in your video.
So that was a fucking lie.
But the video where I spent the length of a short film ramming my fist up your ass is the one you ran away from. So, since you missed it, red means shut the fuck up, I'm still talking. Green means it's your turn to speak. You seem to have difficulty understanding when someone hasn't finished making a point, so I have to get elementary on your ass.
Well, yeah, but again, you have to remember, Asmongold pre-watches all of the content he makes, so he is going to prepare all of his talking points in advance. He's going to pause the video whenever it's convenient so he knows exactly what to say and when to say it. That's how Asmongold operates in a majority of his reaction content. Is he pre-watches everything. I don't necessarily mind if you pre-watch shit, but, like, the way Asmongold does it is incredibly dishonest. Like, I've pre-watched stuff before on the channel before. In some cases, I can't help it, because, like, I've seen it, like, Papa Gut react to it before I have here. I try not to pre-watch stuff as best as I can, but, you know, sometimes you can't help it. And that's fine, like, if it's, like, a couple of times, but Asmongold should just be more honest about it. He pretends like every single reaction he does is authentic to sound more intelligent than he actually does.
You are low IQ after all. Anyway, a few days ago, Zachariah here posted this tweet in response to Joe Bartolozzi refuting the claim that black people are more likely to commit crimes than white people.
I wonder, is Birdman going to play the original clip here? Oh, I guess he is going to play the original clip here. Okay. Yeah, I was going to pull up the original Joe Bartolozzi clip on my own feed, just so we get, like, the full context of it, but I think Birdman's going to play it here, so I don't have to do that.
Let's have a listen.
Do not commit more crimes than white people on a personality basis. If you're going to say statistically they do, that is only because of impoverished areas in the lives that they've been given because of the implications that have been put on them through, what is it called? Systemic racism.
Yes. Yeah. That's basically, like, what Joe Bartolozzi is saying is a fact here. Like, black people have been through systemic racism, whether it's through slavery, whether it's through the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, whether, like, again, like, black people have always had just, like, a more of a challenge, whether it's, like, getting jobs, whether it's through, like, trying to fight through the systems. Especially when you take into account, I forget where specifically, but there was a specific district in a city. I forget where. I could maybe, like, try to pull it up if I remember later in this video. But basically, there was, like, a specific city where cops were over-patrolling districts, predominantly black neighborhoods of districts, where they would be giving tickets to black people, which ultimately meant that they had more trouble, like, getting up and, like, making more money, which inevitably led to more crime. So yes, do black people commit more crimes? Probably, but there is a specific reason for that. It's because areas or groups of people that have been through, like, systemic, like, racism are more likely to commit crimes. You don't see Asmongold getting upset when the Italian mafia exists, or the Irish mafia exists, or fucking Polish gangs, or the fucking Jewish, like, mafia as well. There's a mafia for Jewish people. Or Russian mafias as well. Again, Jewish, Irish, and Italian people weren't always considered white. And, like, Asmongold would be calling them white N-words if this was, like, the 1940s or the 1950s. They've existed, like, crime has existed for a while, but again, now that they're considered white people, Asmongold's not going to say anything to them. Asmongold's only going to say something when it's black people that are doing them.
They've been given
But yeah, everything Joe Bartolozzi is saying here is just objectively a fact.
shit hand and therefore live in that shit hand and are more likely to commit crimes if they're impoverished, living in areas where they have to survive. If you were to take a group of people and put them in an impoverished area, they're likely to commit more crimes because they have not been helped in the way that they need to be. But if you meet a black guy on the street and you say to his face, he's more likely to commit a crime than you're fucking racist.
Yeah. I mean, like, why would you go up to a person and say you're more likely to commit a crime just because of the color of their skin? Why? That doesn't take into account, you don't know where that person is in life. There are also, by the way, if you want to get, like, super woke, there are some rich black people, like Eric Adams as well. So, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't personally like Eric Adams. He's a fucking scumbag. But, like, yeah, you don't know where what that person has been through. And also, like, again, if you're going to be an agitator and, like, say that you're more likely to commit crimes, you're going to go up to a black person, or if you're going to be like Chud the Builder and, like, say that they are, like, chimping out or whatever, you're going to give, like, racist dog whistles, or you call them the N-word, I'm not going to feel sorry if you get your ass beat. Probably shouldn't beat them up for it, but, like, I'm not going to feel sorry if you do. It's like, talk shit, get hit kind of deal, right? Even if there is freedom of speech laws around it.
Yes, whatever statistical fact you're going to throw is clouded by the idiocy of yourself to not recognize why that fact is in existence. Not because black people are genetically more likely to commit a crime. That's stupid.
Yeah, so, again, Joe Bartolozzi is just speaking nothing but facts. I would say Joe Bartolozzi was, like, pretty authentic in the way he communicated it. The only people that are upset by Joe Bartolozzi's take are just morons on Twitter that want to rage bait, or that feel like black people are inherently lesser than. And guess what? Asmongold is one of the people that inherently thinks that black people are lesser than. So, of course, he is offended by them. I don't even know why Asmongold feels so threatened by black people when he never fucking leaves his house. You're never going to interact with a black person ever again. The only black person you've ever talked to was a guy that had CSAM on his computer.
So, Joe is obviously correct, but his argument can do with a bit of cleaning up, and that's what I'm here for. What Joe is referring to is the correlation of poverty and crime. This is a very well understood phenomenon that those placed under economic strain, limited opportunities, and weakened social structures often resort to property and violent crime.
Which, by the way, is the reason that the Italian mafia and the Irish mafia existed back in the day. Italian people did not have nearly as many opportunities back in the day, and so that's why we saw the rise of the Italian mafia. Same with the Irish mafia. Sorry, I just wanted to quickly research this. Ireland does not have a traditional mafia like the Italian Cosa Nostra. Instead, it's an organized crime. I mean, again, it's the same idea. Even if it's not like a traditional mafia, there's still like a mob group surrounding the Irish people. You get what I'm trying to say, right? I just wanted to quickly add this in the video. That's all.
A large body of criminology and sociology research has found a consistent relationship between poverty, inequality, and crime across many different countries and ethnic groups. Studies from the United States, Indonesia, Latin America, Europe, and cross-national datasets all show that areas with higher poverty, unemployment, and economic deprivation tend to experience higher rates of certain crimes, particularly violent and property crime.
Yeah, because they haven't had as many opportunities to make money, and the only way they can make money is by resorting to doing this.
A 2021 study published in the NLM found that more unequal societies tend to have higher crime, as well as lower social trust. Interestingly, the study also found that the more equal the distribution of resources, the higher the trust equilibrium, and that increasing punishment severity is not effective at this goal. And that particular piece of information relates to our pal Pigpen here, where he has routinely argued for more severe punishment. Looks like the science
Well, yeah, I mean, the only reason why Asmongold celebrates the death of people like Renee Good, or he thinks that Muslim people should be hung on the streets of New York, which, by the way, he said this during the Zoran Mamdani bombing. There's no hatred towards Jake Lang, who is like an actual white supremacist, and he's shouting like a bunch of really hateful white supremacist shit at the rally. There's no hatred for that, but there's only hatred for the people that try to go after him. And listen, I'm not trying to be an asshole. Like, you shouldn't bomb people, you shouldn't assault people, or you shouldn't try to terrorize other people. But if you're going to be spewing white supremacist rhetoric and you're going to say that non-white people are lesser than, I'm not going to feel sorry if people are going to try to be violent to you. Like, again, it's a talk shit and get hit sort of thing. Now, should the Muslim kids have been arrested there? Yeah, sure, fine. Like, the police can deal with it. They can arrest them. Like, I get it. They tried to bomb them, right? I totally understand that. The problem is that Asmongold in that video, I have a whole video reacting to this. It was back in March, so you guys can go feel free to check that out if you want. But Asmongold tries to use that as a vehicle to communicate that every single Muslim person is a terrorist and that Muslim people should be hanging on the streets of New York. Again, Asmongold just says things because it makes him feel good. He dismisses left-leaning people for being too emotional-based, but saying Muslim people should be hung on the streets of New York, that is an inherently emotional thing to do. Celebrating the death of Renee Good and then justifying Alex Preddy getting shot by ICE, that is an emotional thing to do. Just saying. Like, you want to talk about emotional motherfuckers. Asmongold is more emotional than anybody on the left.
Agrees with him. Surprise, surprise.
I love that he's like has this text on screen, so if Asmongold chooses to react to this, he'll like pause and make commentary.
Anyway, similar findings have appeared in studies examining crime in Mexico, Indonesia, Canada, and
yeah, with like the Mexican cartel and stuff. Yep.
Across the European Union.
Breaking Bad handles these topics very, very well, I think. Very good show. I mean, I'm sure everybody's familiar with Breaking Bad, so if you haven't already seen, I mean, what are you fucking doing if you haven't already seen it? Just absolute cinema show.
Like this one here, where it's shown that people who are at risk of poverty report experiencing higher crime in their local area. So you see, this pattern is global and not unique to any ethnic group. Poor communities in parts of Eastern Europe and impoverished regions in Asia all experienced elevated crime rates compared to the wealthier populations around them. The same socioeconomic mechanisms observed in poor Black American neighborhoods are observed worldwide amongst people of entirely different ethnicities and cultures. Even the white supremacist's favorite non-white country, Japan, experiences higher crime rates when poverty and unemployment rates rise, as shown in this study. Moving slightly west, South Korea is experiencing what they call a silver crime wave, where the rise of poverty and its aging population has seen a commensurate rise in crime. All of this does not mean poverty mechanically causes every individual to commit crime, nor does every poor community become highly violent. But the broader statistical relationship between resource deprivation and crime appears repeatedly across continents and populations. This is why many scholars argue that racial disparities in crime are better understood through the lens of concentrated poverty, inequality, historical segregation, and access to opportunity, rather than race itself.
All right, he has the green on screen, so if Asmongold reacts to this, he can say stuff. I don't really have much commentary to give over here. I mean, everything Birdman is saying is I mean, he's shown receipts and facts for everything that he has shown to us, so I don't really have much to add to that. I mean, I basically have been saying the same thing earlier in this video.
The reason black people are associated with crime in the United States is because black Americans have historically faced disproportionate levels of concentrated poverty, segregation, underinvestment, and
again, what I brought up earlier with like cops, like, patrolling districts of predominantly black neighborhoods and like disproportionately adding tons of tickets or giving them tons of like tickets for like really stupid reasons is part of the reason why you might see more crime in that area, because that's going to cause black people to have less money than they otherwise would.
Systemic exclusion from economic opportunity, conditions that criminologists and sociologists have
because you're like robbing them of like opportunities.
Repeatedly linked to higher crime rates across every population on Earth, regardless of ethnicity. Once black American slaves were...
here's the thing, right? You could show all this information to Asmongold's audience, but Asmongold's audience is not really going to care because they see Asmongold as like the gospel and him speaking facts, basically. He like talks about these things. Unfortunately, when you see Asmongold talk about his own takes and he talks about the whole like Joe Bartolozzi thing, like Asmongold's audience is unfortunately not intelligent enough to understand what he's actually saying, and he's actually communicating that like black people are just like lesser than, basically. But like Asmongold tries to like play this like plausible deniability game to be like, oh, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Freed, they immediately faced discrimination, a lack of economic opportunities, exclusion from wealth-building institutions, segregated housing, unequal education, targeted policing, and widespread racial violence. Each of those things on their own contribute to poverty, which I have just proven correlates with crime. Black people were subjected to all of them at the same time. The United States created a permanent underclass in the form of black Americans by freeing formerly enslaved people without providing meaningful economic restitution, equal protection under the law, or fair access to housing, education, and employment, while simultaneously enforcing systems that kept many black communities segregated, impoverished, and politically marginalized.
Yeah, which also, like, is upsetting because it's like, on one hand, like, yeah, like, black people, I would say, are still... I mean, it's definitely a lot better now than it was in the past. Like, black people are treated a lot more equally, but unfortunately, there's still, like, racial profiling by cops. There's still tons of, like, long-form damage that's been done, or long-term damage that's been done as a result of this systemic racism that's lasted generations. And so, like, you're still going to see, like, a lot of project areas that are predominantly in black neighborhoods. It just sucks. And also gentrification is a thing, which also is going to put a lot of these people out of homes, which is ultimately going to... You guys know the whole gist. It do be tough here. It do be tough in the U.S.
So, pop quiz, ass on mold.
Ass on mold.
What do you do when you don't have access to decent education, can't get a job, live in a slum, and can barely feed yourself?
Which is, like, he should be able to answer this question because Asmongold grew up on, like, tons of welfare systems. Like, he talked about how he grew up poor, having to take care of his mom, which is an honorable thing to do, admittedly, taking care of your mother growing up instead of, like, going to, like, a business school. But when you grow up, like, the problem is that Asmongold got lucky on Twitch. Like, he was streaming on Twitch and he got lucky and he got famous. And, like, he started doing it by, like, playing World of Warcraft. The only meaningful jobs Asmongold's ever worked in his life is, like, working in the IRS and then, like, working at a Sam's Club for, like, one day. Like, that's it. Those are the only meaningful jobs. Aside from that, Asmongold's never really had, like, any meaningful job in his life ever. And he never has to have a meaningful job again in his life ever because he's a fucking millionaire. And he can never leave. He can get away with never leaving his house and drinking, like, fucking 8 Coca-Colas a day and then living in a shithole and calling other countries shitholes, basically. So, like, Asmongold, you would think Asmongold would have more sympathy for areas with more poverty and, like, more crime, basically, but he doesn't.
Statistically, you turn to crime. It's not a black thing. It's a human thing. So this is what Joe was trying to communicate. That
basically. Yeah, that's literally what Joe Bartolozzi's take was. And a lot of people, mainly on Twitter, again, because, like, Twitter is inherently a right-leaning platform. So, like, people on Twitter are going to be upset at a take like this. And if you show, like, Asmongold's audience, like, all this evidence, they're not going to care because a majority of MAGA and a majority of right-wingers are not really facts-based. They don't really try to base anything off facts. They just scroll through Twitter, they see something on Twitter, and they go, oh, that's a fact, not realizing that people can lie on Twitter, people can spread misinformation on Twitter, any number of things can happen on Twitter. Because Twitter is such an unreliable source outside of like maybe a few accounts that are like verifiably good with credibility.
Americans face conditions that overwhelmingly correlate with higher crime rates, and that this is due to systemic racism. All those factors I just named were racist, and all of them were systemic. Redlining, or the process of systematically denying minority communities access to mortgages, loans, and investment based on their race.
I mean, like, everything that we're seeing on screen, like, all the sources that Birdman's pointing out here are the reason why DEI and affirmative action programs are put into place. Now, if you want to make a good faith conservative argument, you could make an argument saying, you know, some of DEI programs or some affirmative action programs go too far. You know, the Electoral College in Alabama, where a poor person's vote counts more than a regular person in the Electoral College, like, that's a thing. And, you know, that's an example of it going too far. That's fine. You can make that argument. You could also say that, like, sometimes, like, DEI programs have, like, very poor implementation, and affirmative action programs have very poor implementations in jobs. I would say it's pretty few and far between, but there are times where it can happen. So there are some good faith conservative arguments you can make in that vein. But that's not really the problems that Asmongold communicates when he talks about DEI or affirmative action. He has a problem only when, like, black people get jobs, basically, because he hates black people.
Helped trap many black Americans in impoverished and underdeveloped neighborhoods for generations. That is obviously racist. That is systemic because it was a government-sponsored organization that invented this, and it was legal. Systemic racism. The main way a family in the United States builds wealth is through real estate. If you own a home, you generally pass that home down to your children, and since your children are now not required to use the majority of their income for housing, they are able to save, invest, pursue education, start businesses, and accumulate wealth more easily themselves, creating a compounding cycle of generational wealth. If you routinely deny black families the opportunity to own valuable real estate, you rob them of the opportunity to create generational wealth.
Which, again, by the way, Irish mobs, Polish mobs, Jewish mobs, Italian mobs, that is why they existed back in the day. It is literally the same thing that black people are going through. Well, not the same exact thing, but, like, again, they didn't have as many opportunities, which is why they turned to crime. It's the same idea. But no one really cares when they go through with it, especially considering a lot of these groups were not considered white back in the day. Asmongold only has a problem with it when it's black people doing it.
Is the racial wealth gap, and why is everyone talking about it? The racial wealth gap is a measure of wealth inequality between racial groups in the US. Here's a prime example. Black families make up 14% of the population, but own only 5% of American wealth, while white households make up 65% of the population, but control 80% of the wealth. The gap traces back to the 1863 Emancipation Proclamation, which led to freedom for almost 4 million Black Americans. By 1860, their labor accounted for 60% of U.S. exports, $200 million a year, where Black Americans received nothing. No land, no money. Without any money or land, how could newly free Black Americans create wealth? The second barrier to building wealth, housing discrimination.
One significant driver to the racial wealth gap, as I mentioned before, is going to be homeownership. Homeownership is a significant driver of wealth, whereby every year of homeownership, homeowners gain about $14,000 in equity. Conversely, if you don't have access to homeownership, you don't have access to that type of equity and that cushion that you could get from having money saved from homeownership.
Housing discrimination allows banks to deny home loans to the Black community through a practice called redlining. Redlining was a government-sponsored practice of denying mortgages and other financial services to segregated Black and brown neighborhoods. It's called redlining because bankers literally drew red lines around undesirable communities. One Black household in a middle-class community was enough to make the federal government deny mortgage loans in that area. As a result, Black families turned to predatory lenders or were shut out from home ownership completely.
We just keep having to fight battles, but a lot of the things that have happened to Black folks in America were orchestrated and they were legal. They were systemic. I mean, it wasn't like it just happened that way. It was designed to be that way.
And like all forms of systemic racism, the downstream effects are seen in the modern day. And by the way, This is the United States Treasury website literally admitting one of the factors for this gap is due to the United States government.
Yeah, because a lot of these systems were legal. I mean, like, if you want to get, like, super woke, slavery was legal at one point in the United States. You could own black people as slaves in the U.S. It was not right to do that. Absolutely not. No one in their fucking right mind would say that slavery is okay. I guess Asmongold would be fine with it. I mean, Asmongold has admitted that we should bring back slavery. If you steal $2 worth of stuff, you should do, like, unpaid labor in a fucking slave camp. Like, this is stuff that Asmongold has said. Like, very disproportionate, like, levels of punishment for, I would say, like, probably misdemeanor crimes. So, yeah, that's, yeah, like, no one would argue that slavery is, like, a good thing, and it was legal, unfortunately. It was all put into place by the U.S.
They are admitting their policies stifled black home ownership. Systemic racism. Now, back to Zach's dumbass tweet.
Yeah, obviously this tweet that Asmongold put out, it's obvious. Like, first of all, we have to understand, Asmongold first and foremost is a rage baiter. Like, he is gonna say shit that rage baits people, and unfortunately, a lot of his fans use this as an excuse for him to say dumb shit. Like, they'll be like, oh yeah, he's a shit stirrer, but he doesn't actually mean it. Okay, so you're admitting that he's grifting then, effectively. That's basically what the basis of your argument is that he's grifting and he's a shit stirrer. Like, you can only, if you're going to excuse the shit that he's saying as a shit stirrer, you really can only go one of two ways with your argument. One, you're effectively admitting that he's grifting for the right, which that's possible. I mean, Takedown, one of Asmongold's orbiters, admitted to grifting in the court transcripts with Pink Chew when he was convicted in a civil case for being a rapist. And then two, you have him saying that he's a shit stirrer and he's knowingly trying to get a reaction out of the people that he is intentionally pissing off. And if you're going to go that route, that he's intentionally trying to piss people off, again, would you not be inviting some level of fucking violence to happen to you? I'm sorry. Like, listen, I'm not, and that's not a call to violence for Asmongold. You shouldn't be violent to him. But, like, let's just say Asmongold repeated, like, he's saying it on Twitter because he feels safe to say something like this on Twitter. Because he never leaves his house. He's never going to have to worry about anyone ever doing anything violent to him. But let's just say Asmongold was brave enough to attend a fucking Jake Lang protest and say something like this. You are essentially inviting people to be violent to you. Sorry, that's just how it works. Talk shit, get hit. Doesn't matter about free speech laws. If you go up to a black person, call them the N-word, you are inviting a reaction to get the shit beaten out of you, even if it is a free speech law. If you go up to a gay person, call them the F-slur, you are inviting a reaction to get beaten up by that gay person because you are intentionally trying to be racist or homophobic to them. And you guys can call me too woke, you guys can say that I'm using buzzwords, but I'm literally giving you examples where you are actively trying to be hateful to these groups of people. So it's not really using any buzzwords. These are actual usages and correct usages of this word. Anyways, we'll read what Asmongold said, because this is an incredibly fucking low IQ take. Only, like, actual low IQ people agree with what he's saying here.
The first fucking line from this genius is that black people benefit from systemic racism.
God, it's just such a dumb, it's just such an uneducated low IQ take. If you've taken any history class in high school, in middle school even, you would understand that this sentence is far from the truth. Like, it's not even close. And, like, I know what Asmongold's argument is. His argument's going to be, but what about DEI programs? What about affirmative action? DEI programs and affirmative action were put into place because of the systemic racism that black people went through. That's why they existed. And also, not for nothing, but, like, white women can also benefit from DEI. Women are also have been, like, a group that would fall under DEI. I mean, women haven't always been able to vote in the U.S., so white women could be able to vote. And let's just think about it, right? Let's just say you have a black person, you could hire a black person or a white woman, right? Or chances are, like, DEI may not be as beneficial to them, because let's just say you're put in a situation where you have to fire one of them, right? If you fire the black person, chances are you might be put into a fucking lawsuit for wrongful termination, potentially. Or you could fire the white woman, you may not have to worry about that as much. Or the white man, and you may not have to worry about that lawsuit when you fire them. So I don't know, maybe DEI policies may not be as beneficial as you think. Just saying. If you really want to get super woke.
Now, I know what Zach is trying to say here, that through policies like affirmative action, black people benefit, and that because affirmative action is a governmental policy, that is systemic. The problem with this line of logic is that it's not racism.
Again, affirmative action and DEI have been put into place because of systemic racism. That's the reason they existed to begin with.
Yes, affirmative action effectively produced outcomes where an equally qualified white man could be disqualified for an equally qualified black man. But this process also held that an equally qualified white woman would be chosen over an equally qualified black man. In fact, white women were the largest beneficiaries of DEI and affirmative action policy.
Bro, what did I say? I didn't even, by the way, guys, I did not pre-watch this video, I promise. But I literally just talked about this, where white women benefit off of DEI. Guess, you want to know who else benefits off DEI? Veterans, poor people, both of which can have white people in them. There's probably a few others off the top of my head. LGBTQ people, whether you're gay, lesbian, those are like DEI benefits.
So by definition and by practice, affirmative action wasn't a systemically racist policy because all ethnic groups benefited from that policy and it disproportionately affected gender. So it is a lie that affirmative action was racist. The best you could argue here is that it is somewhat discriminatory towards white men, and white men specifically, because
I don't really think you could say it discriminates white. I don't even know if you could make that argument. Because, like, ultimately, like, it is not a real thing that, like, black people or, like, tons of, like, minority groups are robbing white people from opportunities. Plenty of white people in the country still have plenty of fucking jobs. Like, if anything, like, I pretty much pointed out earlier that it's, like, probably more wise to, like, hire a fucking white person because if you have to fucking fire that white person later, you won't potentially get into a lawsuit. If anything, like, DEI policies could, in some cases, make it so that you're more encouraged to hire white people, to be honest. That's why I think DEI policies can potentially go too far in, like, situations like that. That could be an argument that Asmongold could make, is that in a situation like that, where people can take advantage of DEI policies and then, like, if they get fired from the job, then you can sue them for wrongful termination, potentially wrongfully, in that lawsuit, and potentially is wrongful. That is, like, Asmongold's best argument that he could make here, honestly. But he's so fucking stupid that he can't even make that argument. This inherently is just a black people bad take. That's all this is. This is just a black people. By the way, can I just, like, point out, when Asmongold specifically says it's true that blacks experience... Blacks. Why do you have to say it like that? Why do you have to say blacks? Call them black people. When you say blacks, you are reducing them to a color. You are totally fine with saying white and Asian Americans. You're totally fine with saying it in one other sentence. But then for black people, you reduce them to blacks. Be a fucking adult. Stop giving racist dog whistles because you know what you're fucking doing, and say black people. You're also Twitter blue, so you're not limited on, like, space in your tweet either, so you can't use that as an argument either. Say black people. All right? Like, we know what you're doing is intentionally racist. It's pathetic.
Benefits every single other group, and even then, that would be a lie, as affirmative action includes mandates for hiring veterans and people with disabilities. Both
that too, yeah. I forgot about disabilities as well. Back when I worked at a Staten Island cafe in high school in New York City, I worked with people who had disabilities, and they had, like, mentors coming in. So yeah,
groups.
This is true.
White men make up a significant portion. So no, affirmative action and DEI are not a form of systemic racism. And no, black people and other minority groups do not enjoy preferential treatment at the expense of white and Asian people. Like, are you unaware that Asians are a minority group in the United States too? Why would you group those two together, Zach? Are you referring to the ridiculous Supreme Court ruling Students versus Harvard? Setting that aside for the moment, what other areas are black and Hispanic people benefiting at the expense of Asian people besides the overstated college admissions issue? Give examples. I'm sure everyone would like to hear them, Zach. And please, be very specific.
We know damn well Asmongold's not going to react to this video because Asmongold, this is like the Birdman in a lot of his videos systematically, I'll just say, because that's the correct usage of that word. Systematically, like, all of Birdman's videos have been just like a massively good takedown of Asmongold's videos. Even if you argue that Birdman is being petty in his videos and he's like being kind of like, you know, snarky in some of his videos, I think he has every right to be, because some of the shit that Asmongold says is fucking obnoxious. So if you're going to be obnoxious and you're going to intentionally say shit that's offensive to other people, I think Birdman has every right to be as snarky and petty as he can be against you. Like, sorry, like, he kind of asked for it. Unfortunately, a lot of Asmongold's fans are not intelligent enough to understand that Asmongold is giving what is called a dog whistle, because he is... I don't think it's far-fetched to say that Asmongold is very comfortable aligning himself with the alt-right. I mean, he wants to collaborate with people like Nick Fuentes, who's a legitimate white supremacist. He also has positive sentiment to Sam Hyde, who's another white supremacist. I don't think it's far-fetched to say any of those things. Listen, I could give, like, good takes all you want, and it doesn't matter how good my take is or how backed up my take is. Asmongold fans are still going to find a way to be like, oh, you're too woke, you're gay. They're gonna, like, call me gay or something, or they'll call me slurs in, like, the comment section, or they'll, like, say that I'm fucking stupid, and then they'll believe their low IQ Roach King Asmongold, basically. They're gonna find some way to say that I'm wrong in this video, but, like, okay. I mean, you guys can do that all you want. Like, you're not really rooted in facts or anything. If you want to do that, like, be my guest. Leave all the fucking comments open. The floodgates are open for you guys to fuel your victim complex.
Back to the Supreme Court issue, we currently have a compromised Supreme Court that is doing its damnness to implement overwhelmingly conservative policies and rulings.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking Supreme Court that Trump, like, rigged, and, like, he stacked his own Supreme Court to actively try to remove rights to marginalized groups. They're also trying to, like, they're trying to remove healthcare. They're making cuts to the Department of Education, because conservatives are extremely anti-education. In fact, Trump himself specifically says that he relies on stupid people to vote for him. Trump has said stuff like this, by the way, where he relies on stupid people to vote for him. And also another, like, reason that they are very anti-education is because they also rely on stupid people to believe in organized religion. And just to be clear, that's not a dig at every single person that's religious. You know, there are a lot of good religious people out there. Believing in God can be very beautiful for a lot of people. It can also be a nice way to live and, like, cope with some of the really bad stuff with life. So if you turn to religion and you're not a hateful person, like, God bless you. You know, I'm happy for you. So this whole, like, segment of me talking about organized religion, this is not for you if you fall under that group. However, big fucking however, if you're like Charlie Kirk, who, again, didn't deserve to get assassinated, but let's be real, he was not a good person. If you're like Charlie Kirk and you say, hey, my 12-year-old should be forced to give birth to a rapist's baby because the Bible says so and that abortion is a sin, you have some form of religious psychosis, and also that is a form of child abuse if you're forcing your child to give birth to a rapist's baby, because you're basically giving more options for the rapist than for the actual carrier of the baby, who is the daughter. If you say things like, hey, being gay or trans is a mental illness because the Bible says so, despite the fact that you believe in a magical apple curse, which is more mentally insane than feeling like you were gay or feeling like you're trans. If you say that, that's a form of religious psychosis, right? Like, again, unfortunately, a lot of people use religion as an excuse to justify really stupid things, and a lot of organized religion relies on very stupid people to not question the Bible as much. And so when you remove things like the Department of Education, you rely on more people that are stupid, they're not going to be questioning organized religion as much.
And these rulings almost always come at the expense of Black Americans. Its ruling in Students v. Harvard was a joke because the prosecution's claim hinged on the idea that American institutions like Harvard already operate on a level playing field, which we know they don't. At Harvard specifically, there are legacy admissions, donor preferences, networking advantages, and wealth inheritance that disproportionately benefit white students. Somehow, the group suing Harvard ignored all of that to focus on the 18% of the class of 2027 who were Black. 18%. This number decreased to 14% after the Supreme Court's ruling. The Asian cohort went from 37% to 37%. Literally zero change to them, but a 4% drop in Black student admission, which, if you haven't been paying attention, is the fucking goal. The group that sued Harvard, Students for Fair Admissions, headed by this guy, Edward Blum, who has dedicated his entire career to dismantling progress in racial equality and specifically black representation.
You want to know who else had dedicated their entire career to stripping people of their rights, like black people, gay people, and trans people? Charlie Kirk. Again, that you shouldn't be violent to Charlie Kirk, and what happened to him was terrible. Like, I would have preferred to see him fall off instead of get assassinated. But again, Charlie Kirk was an asshole, and he spent his entire career being a white supremacist. So, like, it's hard for me to feel bad that he died, but also I'm not saying that it should have happened either.
Bush versus Vera, a Supreme Court case against redistricting in Texas that sought to increase racial minority representation in Congress. Fisher versus University of Texas, another Supreme Court case regarding affirmative action in a college. Shelby County versus Holder, a Supreme Court case concerning pre-clearance, or the right of the federal government to approve of voting law changes of certain states that had a history of racial discrimination, i.e., the South. This one was important because it resulted in a landmark decision that allowed historically racially discriminant states in the South to fuck with voter ID laws, removing the most effective protection against racial voter suppression. Doesn't that sound familiar? The legacy of Edward Blum. That's this guy's entire goal, to roll back civil rights protections, especially those that affect or benefit black people.
Yeah, because I guess he believes that black people are just inherently trying to go after him. It's just, I can never imagine living your life thinking that black people are constantly trying to go after you, or black people are constantly trying to invade your life in some way, shape, or form. It's just such a victim complex.
Just like I pointed out in my last video, it's a strange coincidence everything Zach promotes is backed by some white guy whose life goal is to shit on black people. So this is why Zach said white and Asian Americans in his tweet, because like most people that promote white supremacist rhetoric, he's weaponizing Asian people against black and Hispanic people in the United States. This is a very common tactic known as the model minority myth. Zach nor Edward Blum give a flying fuck about Asian people. Asians are just a pawn in their game, a game that, when that game is won, will be turned against Asians. And unfortunately,
yeah, because the goalpost keeps shifting. You know, once they're done with black people, they're going to be done with whatever the next non-white group is, basically. It's pretty disgusting.
Fortunately, some of them are too fucking stupid to recognize that.
Yeah, because this guy, Kangmin Lee, yeah, this guy is like a fucking weird grifter on Twitter. I don't even think that this guy like truly believes in anything he says. I see him come up in my feed. I think he's like unironically grifting, because right-wing grifting is like very lucrative and you can make a fuck ton of money out of it, and he realizes that, so I genuinely think he's just grifting. I don't even think he believes in some of the shit he says. Alright, I think that's the end of the video. I mean, Birdman makes very good content. All of his videos, again, are a systematic takedown of Asmongold's really dog shit takes, and it really does a good job of debunking some of the really, really low IQ shit that Asmongold says.